Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, frequent flyers, wherever you're dialing in from today. We are talking about eliminating resistance and leading with influence. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment not having heart palpitations and spiking adrenaline every single time your phone rings. It's possible. How do I know? Because I've worked through it and so has Renee. This is the dream of most executives, especially when we are talking about business aviation. On today's episode, we're going to talk about organizational health. What is it? Why should you care? And what we can do in our own organization, starting with ourselves, the role that coaching plays in building a team and having them work with you instead of against you, and sparking collective innovation. Today, my guest is Renee Bangelsdorf, and she and I are longtime friends and also going to be presenting next month on stage at the National Business Aviation Association's BASE conference in Las Vegas. We'll be talking about, you guessed it, organizational health and focusing on 9 things that you can do as a leader and employee to improve it. Today, we're going to be reviewing all of these things in depth and also talking about something that you can do very easily day to day. Renee, I'm very happy to have you here with me today.
Sarah, I'm thrilled to be here. It's a great way to start a day having your energy in my life. So thank you so much for having me here. I know this is going to be a great conversation because you and I have had so many conversations about these topics over the years. And I just learn something new every time I talk to you because I feel like we sharpen each other. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And yes, I love that. It's really a reminder that every time we have a connection point, a conversation, it is a two-way street, no matter who's the mentor or mentee or friend or, leader or employee, we always have that opportunity to sharpen our skill set and build our awareness. So that's such a wonderful point. I'm really excited to have you here. So we're going to dive in and organizational health. Now, a lot of people, when they hear this word, they either roll their eyes or they think, no, I don't need to worry about that because I have things to do. I have to be productive. I have to grow. I have these meetings. What would you say is organizational health in your experience of it in business aviation? And what is the thing that we need to be focusing on in order to help improve it?
I'd love to start in a little bit of a different place with that, Sarah, just so we can get to the answer to that question. And
Absolutely.
I'll do that with a story about myself because I know that this isn't unique to me. So during the pandemic and a little bit after the pandemic, I know that this happened to a lot of people, especially in business aviation, because we were so busy with some unusual growth and some unusual challenges during that time. And I found myself personally in something that my doctor calls adrenal failure.
Mm.
That means that my cortisol level got so high and was constantly so high that my body actually quit producing cortisol. And you're like, okay, so no more stress hormone. That's good, right? Well, no, it's actually not good because it can start impacting all of the other systems in your body as well. And so, in order to recover from adrenal failure, you have to start thinking about all the other systems in your body. Like, are you
Mm.
giving your nervous system the rest that it needs? Are you giving your brain the oxygen that it needs? Are you giving your kidneys the water that they need? Right? Are you actually putting the proper fuel into the systems in your body in order to recover from something that caused a lot of stress? And so I think as we're in this period of recovery from the stress that the pandemic brought us, right? Good
Yeah.
stress and bad stress, we really need to look at, are we putting the proper fuel into the organizational systems in our company? Do
Yes.
we have the right processes in place? Do we have the right accountability in place? Have we revisited those key performance indicators of our employees? Do we have tabs on, and are we investing in our culture, which are the norms that we have in our company, are those healthy for taking us to the next level in our business? And I think examining those areas in our business is what leads us to look at, hey, we're experiencing some pain points here.
Yeah.
When I experience some pain points in my body, I'm like, should I call the doctor? Should I Google this?
Dr. Google.
Merit an emergency room trip. And I think we have the same things within our business. So organizational health in many ways parallels our own personal physical health, and that it's a lot of different systems and inner workings that lead us to the best performance we can possibly have.
I love that. What a great analogy, because it's something that's tangible. And the reason why I asked the question the way I did is because that's what most people do, right? They ask the question before they have the information or understanding to be able to actually answer it and understand that the answer that's being given can be applied in the proper way. And so many times we do that. We jump ahead. We have 10 steps thinking that it's one, but it really does need to be broken down. And you just brought me back to like my third grade class, when on my piece of paper, we had the body, human body, and we did the skeletal system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, and the organs and the bones. And we learned about these different things and then how they all start to work together. And so really the health for organization is all of those systems being looked after, and not just once we have the crisis, right? Making sure we're doing that holistic and preventative care, having the awareness of how they interact, so that if we don't, if we solely focus on one at the neglect of the others, we have disharmony. And then that's when we'll have disease or an injury, something like that pop up.
Absolutely. And those things show up in our organizations as well, right? If we're
Yeah.
completely focused on financial results, then we end up with mercenary employees. We end up putting ourselves in a position where, we may end up, oh, we're profitable, but people hate working for us.
Right.
And eventually, when people are hating their job, they leave or they don't give it their best. And
Absolutely.
what we find is that we reduce ourselves to the lowest common denominator in our
Right.
organization. If we're only talking about culture and mission, then we may not be profitable. So there's a healthy tension in
Yes.
organizational health, very much like there's a healthy tension in the systems that we take care of in our body, right? We need rest, and we also need workouts, right?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
need rest and we need challenge. And the same thing occurs in organizational health as well. We need some tension in our
Yes.
workplace.
I'm really glad you brought that point up, because so many people, what are we striving for? We're striving for happiness, for peace, for this comfort. And you and I had a conversation recently about the words complacency and compliance. I think it was that we were reviewing, and I actually think the second word I'm misremembering, but they were very contentment and complacency. The definitions are actually very similar, and yet we use them in different contexts. And so we need tension in order for there to be a result, right? If I go to the gym and I just lift the same weight every day for 5 years in a row, I will never get stronger, right? I have to add a little bit, even if it's a quarter kilo, a half kilo, and then feel that soreness in order for my muscles to grow and be able to then build that strength slowly over time. But unfortunately, we have people go, I can lift 100. And, they walk up to it and then they pull their back out, or, they hurt themselves. And so it's really making sure that we are doing it systemically and making sure we account for the other systems. And the different types of rest is also very important. As you mentioned, is it physical rest? Is it mental? Dr. Sandra Dalton did a really wonderful TED Talk, which I'll link in the comments for everybody, about the 7 different types of rest that we can all look at. And in a way, you can actually apply this to your business as well. What in your business needs a little bit of rest? Where do we need to go in and refuel and rejuvenate that particular section and put that energy and attention elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I have not thought about rest across the different systems of a business. So now I have homework to do thinking about that tonight.
Amazing. Yes. Well, perhaps by October, we'll have a better built out analogy there to correlate those 7 types of rest from an individual as how we apply it to the business. Because I know you and I both agree wholeheartedly that it really starts with the self, right? And in order for an organization to be healthy, its leaders need to be healthy, its employees need to be healthy. And it's not about top down or bottom up, it's about both and having an integrated system. And that requires each of us to take accountability and responsibility.
Yeah, I agree with you on part of that, and then I disagree on part of that as well, because I really believe that change has to start at the top. If there's
Oh,
going to be change
yes.
for the health of an organization, that really has to start with the person who's leading the organization, whether it's a department or it's the entire company. The growth of the company and the organizational health of the company are capped by the health of that
Yes.
leader.
You're
And
right.
so if that leader isn't constantly striving to become healthier personally and as a leader, they cap the growth of their entire organization, whether they admit to it or not. I've seen that happen over and over again in aviation organizations, and outside
Oh,
of
yes. It's not
aviation.
exclusive to our industry by any means.
So I think that for those of you who are listening to this who are leaders, I have a motto, a question. It's my $1 million question that I really think about all the time. And it's, what about my leadership is leading to the results that my company is experiencing? Because if
Mm.
I can't, as the leader of the organization, can't take ownership of at least some of what's going wrong, the things that I could immediately turn my attention to,
Right.
then there's really no point in trying to make change happen. If I'm not growing, I can't really expect my teammates to be growing as well. So a little bit of pushback. Everybody has an impact on the culture of an organization or on the change or engagement in an organization, but it's the leader who's steering that ship.
Oh no, absolutely. And what I think I was aiming to say, my intention was that we all have a responsibility to show up and live the values of not only ourselves but our company. And through affecting our own, we can't control anybody else, right? But if we can
Right.
control how we show up, that will be having a ripple effect. And at the same time, you're absolutely right. That organization will be capped by the leadership, because you and I could show up all day long as our best selves, really in alignment and doing things. And we might have that effect on our teams. But again, that is capped by what happens above us. And if there's that disconnect, then everybody, as you said, they will settle to the lowest common denominator, and we fall to the level of our training. And so if we are not all trained and we don't have a leader that is leading us through that change, we will end up reverting back to the old patterns.
So true.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit. You mentioned the adrenal failure. What was that like? Because I know you are, go, go, go. You have a very active and beautiful mind. And so, how did that affect you in terms of the way you had to approach things? Because I know this is going to resonate for a lot of people. We get frustrated when we can no longer do the things that we think we should be able to do. And I had extreme adrenal fatigue, but I had not yet approached or hit the failure mark. I woke up just before that happened, but I was pretty darn close.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of lessons that I learned from that. Um, and this is, you're asking a question, so I'm going to go there, Sarah. But I think one thing that I had to do was get really comfortable with crying, and that
Yes.
sounds kind of pathetic, but I don't like crying. I am not a crier. I am a push through, get stuff accomplished, suck it up, buttercup, make
Yeah.
things happen kind of entrepreneur. And so getting comfortable with crying was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
It's a neurological response to the need to recover from something.
Yes.
And so allowing myself to say, hey, crying isn't weak, crying is normal, helped a lot. And it took
Mm.
a little while to get there where I wasn't um, having some self-loathing about the crying. So that's me being vulnerable here because I don't
Thank
wouldn't
you.
normally say that, but I feel like, maybe there's someone who's listening today who could really hear that. Crying is actually healthy, and your therapist, if you have one, will tell you that. The second thing that I really had to do was learn how to extend grace to myself.
Mm.
I physically could not do the same amount of work at the same intensity that I was doing it before I hit that point. And so I had to say, you know what? And I'm an entrepreneur, so I can do this. I didn't have to go punch a
Right.
clock and deliver results. I could say, you know what? I can only work 3 hours today.
Yeah.
I can give it my all for 3 hours, and then I need to read a book or work on a jigsaw puzzle or go for a walk or, um, cook, do something that rebuilt me instead of
Mm.
demanding or draining me. Um, and then the third thing that I did was I sought professional help. I got therapy, and I also worked with a nutritionist to help me rebuild even like the minerals and
Mm.
amino acids in my body that had been depleted through this process. So I began changing my sleep routine. I got a noise machine for my room and blackout curtains and turned my AC down a little bit lower and all the things that would help me recover better. And then I started wearing a Whoop band to tell me how my
Yes.
recovery was so that I could track it. So those were some things that I did to recover from that. And it would be the same for adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure. But it is really important to say, you know what, I need a pause so that my body can catch up here.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say it's important not to discount those things. And I'm happy to report that the last time I got my blood work done, my cortisol curve for the day where it starts out high and then dips down and
Yeah.
goes into melatonin production for the evening is all normal again. It
Yes.
only took me
Good.
3 months to go from one extreme to back to normal, but it was some concentrated effort in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing that because not many people would do that. And it's an important conversation. There is this prevalent mindset, particularly in STEM or high performing atmospheres, extreme environments, to just push through, ignore body signals, just get it done. And sometimes we have to do that, but we are not designed to be in that fight mode all the time. And yet I hear time and time again from dispatchers and charter sales reps and people in our industry, maintenance technicians, even pilots and cabin crew, everyone, that they have all experienced at some point in their career something that they now jokingly say they have PTSD from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
and I mean, they need to deal with that PTSD. I was actually thinking about this
yeah,
morning. This is so coincidental. I was thinking about being a problem solver,
right.
right? And early in my career, I had a boss who said, "Don't be a problem identifier, be a problem solver." And I was thinking about that from a piloting standpoint, and that when you're in the air and you're the PIC, you have to be the problem solver,
Right.
right? It's on you. But when
Exactly.
you get that airplane back down on the ground, you can do an after action review and just identify problems and find someone else who can resolve those for you.
Mm.
So, had an incident on my little airplane, was the problem solver, got the airplane back down, took it to the mechanic, said, "Here's the problem." And then he said, "Well, could this be the solution?" And could this be the solution? And could this
Right.
be the solution? And we finally found the solution. But that solution wasn't on me because I don't know everything. So
Yes.
while it's very important in aviation because of the nature of our industry to be a problem solver, it's also necessary to identify when we need to be the problem identifier and find someone who can help us identify what that solution is. Everything can't sit on our shoulders.
I love that. I just saw the other day, there's actually a word in German, which I will not be able to remember or pronounce at this moment, that stands for the weight of the world on your shoulders. They actually have a term for it. And we cannot solve what we cannot identify. And last week I had Dr. Peggy DeLong on the podcast, and she is a psychotherapist and gratitude psychologist. And she also mentioned we cannot heal what we cannot feel. And so this is why my play on words for the newsletter, VFR, which is normally visual flight rules, I've changed it to visual, like what do you see? Feelings, F for feelings. How do you feel about that? What are the feelings you're experiencing? And then the rules of reflection. Because we have to identify how we are feeling in order to reflect and be able to then identify the expert help that we need, or which direction to explore to identify which type of rest we need. As a leader, how do you identify these things? You look at lead indicators, not just lag indicators. Make sure your KPIs are actually tied to not just like the profit of the organization. What are the other metrics that you can measure, such as safety, right? That's very big in our industry. But what gets rewarded is what will get done, because that's how we're wired. So how can you build into the systems the things that you want to be replicated so that you can positively reinforce those things?
It's really important.
I love that. Amazing. So that's a beautiful segue into coaching and how coaching can really help teams work together and work for you as a leader and for the business and for the clients rather than fight. Because another very common issue, and this again will not be exclusive to business aviation, but will be the siloed departments that happen as an organization grows and adds more structure. What worked for a 5-person team does not work for a 50 or 500-person team or 5,000 across the globe team. And so we have this aversion for some reason as a leader to coaching. We think, oh, I got here, I proved myself. Now I need to show everybody else that I know what I'm doing. And yet, if you wanted to be a pro golfer or a pro F1 racer or a fighter pilot, would you feel any sort of shame in having a coach guide you through? Right? So it's this kind of funny thing that we, for some reason, in the mind, the mental landscape, feel that we should know it all. So how has coaching really helped you in your personal journey, as well as in the teams that you've been in and worked with?
I was actually at a coaching summit this weekend, Sarah. I think I told you that I
Yes.
was going to that. And really one of the questions, and it was with a guy by the name of Brendan Burchard, who's been a coach's coach for a really long time. He's pretty well known in this area. And he asked the question, what is your definition of coaching?
Mm,
I really had to think about that for a little while. And he put up his big fancy definition of it. And I had talked to a friend of mine named Lindsay Dreiling, who's working on a PhD in this area. And I was thinking about something she said and something he said. And I came up with this analogy that coaching is a little bit like flight following when you're
okay.
on a VFR flight. So if you're a pilot and you're flying VFR, you actually don't, in most airspace, you don't have to tell anyone where you are or what you're doing. You can just be out flying in circles or kind of flying willy-nilly all over the place at any of the altitudes at which you're allowed to fly. But if you are going somewhere, which as business owners or leaders, we want to be going somewhere, right? Sometimes it's a really good idea, especially if you might be in busy airspace or it's a really nice day out, to request flight following because that person can help you. And that's with air traffic control. And they tell you, like, hey, there's traffic in this area, or hey, we think there's a crop duster. We can't really tell their type of airplane, but watch out for that traffic. Or um, when I was flying back from Oshkosh last summer and we were using flight following, the air traffic control was like, hey, there's weather building to the east as you're coming south. You may want to change your direction a little bit to be able to get around that.
Yeah.
And coaching does some of that for you, right? Hey, we're seeing a trend here that you might want to look out for. Or, hey, there's something here that maybe you didn't spot. You have a blind spot in that area, or it's a little hazy out and you can't see that far, but we can see on radar that there's something coming. So
Right.
coaching can do that for you. And coaching did that for me, and probably even more than that. Because when I started attending some coaching or engaging with a coach about 6 years ago, I was able to see great characteristics in myself that I hadn't seen before, and it stretched my leadership.
Hmm.
It challenged me to get out of being in the weeds every day and
Yeah.
really start looking for strategic ways to change my business. And one of the stories that I love to tell about this is that because I started eliminating um, activities that weren't the best use of my time and creating more margin for myself, when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas 4 or 5 years ago, I was able to take that entire Labor Day weekend in 5 days, worked about 72 hours organizing 220,000 pounds of supplies being flown into from the Georgetown airport, being flown into different areas in East Texas to provide relief supplies because I had created margin,
Hmm.
because I had been in coaching. I had a state representative testify before the legislature in Texas that there were unused body bags in Orange County, Texas, because of my work, because we were able to
Wow.
get insulin, because we were able to get um, formula, because we were able to get safe drinking water and bug repellent into those areas that were most impacted. So I think that coaching helps you level up faster and more effectively than if you were trying to just do things on your own. The
Hmm.
same as flight following helps you fly a little safer.
That's a great analogy. And it's really, it's that shining the flashlight on something that you just didn't have your focus on, right? By asking that question, I can all of a sudden go, oh, yes, that is information that's been there, but I haven't been paying attention to it. And it's not only to help you learn about what you don't know, because there's a lot. We know we don't know things, but we don't even know where to begin and how to uncover that. But it helps you to remember the things that you do know but may have forgotten, again, because you're so busy trying to uncover other things, or because, you were taught don't brag, or, that's just what you do. And so you're not acknowledging those wins and that those are strengths and that that's good. There's nothing to hide there or try to play down. And obviously culture plays a huge role into this, and depending on where you went to school and all of so many factors. But it's that remembering, hey, yes, I have this skill set. I have this core value. It is important. Okay, now I can realign my actions to be with that thing. Because when that's muddy, I like to say that coaching helps clear the water. So right now, most people's water is like I've taken a big stick at the bottom of the lake and I've like done this, and all that silt is just everywhere. You're trying to look at things and you can't. And then the coaching just helps you get that stillness so that you can then say, okay, there's a clear go, look this way. And then you're able to see things.
Absolutely.
I love that. And creating margin. I mean, business aviation. We all know that this two, usually, right? Two of them are glued to people's hands, three, four monitors. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to capture. So we want to build in good habits of how we unwind from that, so we're not always in that mode. Because as you said, it's important when you're in the cockpit. It's important when you're behind the screen dispatching, but we don't need it when we're with our partners or our children or, trying to read a book, for
Right.
example.
Right. And I mean, there are systems that we can use to reduce our workload. I mean, in the airplane, autopilot is amazing, life-changing system that you can use to reduce your workload. And there are systems like that for our lives and for our work that will always help us. And as we get coaching, we can identify what needs to be part of those systems, is
Yeah,
been my personal experience.
I love it. And from a team perspective, if we're uncovering those individual aha moments, then as a team as well, they can start to understand better what the other teams need for their system, and then how to interact with that system better, right? And we all appreciate that kind of information. If I know exactly what to give you so that I can get what I need more quickly, I'm going to give that to you every single time. But if I don't understand the importance of something, I will regularly forget to ask for that and give it to you, which then causes you to get frustrated with me, ask me again. I then get frustrated. Well, why didn't you tell me in the beginning it was important? Right. And it just goes around in circles. And then obviously we build resentments and stress. So this can help alleviate a lot of that miscommunication and tension.
Yeah, communication is, in the coaching that I've done, communication has been one of the most important aspects, right? It's communicating clearly with others, it's asking for the right information, it's delegating properly, it's getting into a rhythm of communications to get feedback, it's
Mm,
providing psychological safety in the
mm,
feedback that people give us. All of those things play a big role in how, as leaders, we advance our companies.
yes, absolutely. So would you say that communication has become somewhat of a superpower for you?
I think that communication is a strong suit for me, for sure. I actually have a degree in journalism,
Beautiful.
went to school for news writing and editing. So asking questions has always been an important part of my life. And I would say that I look at things from a lot of different angles.
Mm,
And if I'm looking at, like, kind of what my superpower is, it's really revealing truth.
mm,
And sometimes I do that in a way of exposing people's blind spots, hopefully in a very kind way. We're giving them a new way of looking at something that feels very liberating to
yeah.
them. And sometimes, if I'm being honest, I got the reputation for being a very challenging coach. Like, I do not let people get away with much, and I call them out on things that I think are important for their growth, and their organization's growth as a coach. So definitely have a reputation for asking hard questions, and I think that comes from some of those investigative journalism courses that I took many decades ago.
Well, that's become, part of your psyche, so to speak, and it's, what you chose to program yourself with, and it's a very powerful line of inquiry. And as you said, in a kind way, it can really be what we need to hear, right? Sometimes people are afraid of hurting somebody's feelings and they want to be nice, but that is actually doing a disservice to both you and the other person and potentially others as well. And so having that's what a coach does is it puts the mirror up in front of you so that you can no longer hide from it. And then you ask like you said, your leadership question, what about my leadership has contributed to this issue or to the success? Can I pinpoint something that I was involved in here. Because if you can't, well, then are you actually leading? Or are you aware? Are you present? And what needs to be done to fix that? And I think that's a beautiful place to start, that level of awareness.
Right. And looking at the things that went well
Yeah,
is just, it's maybe more important than looking at the things that didn't go well. So looking at what did we do well here and how can we do more of that is really powerful. That's much more powerful than looking at, oh, what went wrong here? Think about if your parents, when you brought home an A, said, how did you get that A and how can you do more of that? Instead of looking at, where did that C come from? What are you doing wrong?
right.
So instead of examining your weaknesses as your primary go to, examine your strengths or the
Yeah,
things that you do well as your primary inquiry, and then figure out how to do more of that. Oh, that
right.
was good. How do I do more of that? How do I use that to stir up the momentum on my team to do something even better, even more profitable, even more wow the
Yeah.
next time we look at a project like this.
Yes, I love that. I mean, when we focus on our strengths as well, we can have exponential benefit rather than trying to enhance a weakness, right? If we identify what those are, I'm not as strong in these categories, great. I'll hire people around me that are. And therefore, I can then focus on my zone of genius. They can focus on their zone of genius. And then that synergy all ties in together. And as you said, it positively motivates and reinforces. It's like with children, it really is. You need to do things to keep them safe. There's boundaries in place, there's rules in place, and you want them to succeed. And sometimes that means not getting exactly what they want in that moment, right? And learning about impulse control, for example, or how to be disciplined so that the end result can be something that is sustainable, not just a one-time thing. And really, I like that you brought in, is like, make it fun. How do we look at what we're doing well and celebrate that so we can repeat it rather than only looking at how to avoid what we didn't do so well.
Yeah, that's so important, Sarah. And you said something that, I was in my 40s before I figured out that if there's something that I really don't like doing, I should hire someone else to do it rather than trying to get better at it. And that was such an aha moment for me. And it changed my outlook on everything that I do. I'm like, who loves to do this? Who can I pass this off to?
Right.
And it really made my job a lot more enjoyable. And there are ways to do that in a company without hiring. And that's
Absolutely.
one of the things that it's one of the first things that I coach about when I start working with someone.
I love that. And that right there also helps you to figure out where you can grow, right? I know we were talking about this before we went live. And when we talk about sparking this collective innovation, right? We've got this team working together. We want to spark them with energy, get them excited again, and put everybody in the right seat, right? If we go back to an analogy of an airplane, you might be on the right airplane, but you're in the wrong seat. And if everybody's in the right wing, we're probably not getting off the ground, right? We need weight and balance. But before we even talk about how we can collectively spark innovation, we need to make sure that we know what those points are so that we can understand, can we actually grow right now in this area? And so I know you developed something to help with that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I did. So I developed a growth capacity indicator, and it sounds a little bit like it should be in a Back to the Future movie, the flux capacitor, but it shows in what areas you have the most opportunity for growth, and in what areas you're already really strong, so that as you're moving forward, you can do that in a way that there isn't going to be one system or one area that's holding you back. And so, it goes across some different areas. A um, like your self-awareness. It looks at how you're doing in management. It looks at, are you making sure that your systems are optimized? Are you becoming a thought leader in the industry? Are you really um, doing the personal growth to be able to grow the industry? And then what do you need to do within your company to keep risk at as low as it can be without also stifling innovation? So there's always, we talked earlier about the tension. There's
Sure.
always a tension, especially in aviation, between safety and innovation. And there's always like that calculated risk. And how do you manage that within your company? So we look at all of those different areas
Yeah.
in this growth capacity indicator and examine where just taking this assessment will help you see, like, oh, I may need to start thinking about some attention to this area as I'm doing my planning for the next year.
I love it. Well, I've shared that resource with everyone watching as well, and it'll be there in the recording because it really, again, is that flashlight. We need the awareness of our own strengths, weaknesses, things that we may not have even considered that are required for the growth, that are required for the innovation, right? Because we're so singularly focused on only one system right now. And how we can slow down, create more white space so that we can then dedicate time to each of these areas in order to be able to grow ourselves. I love that. I'm going to take it now too. I've got the link up.
Awesome.
Amazing. Renee, so, our industry is super dynamic, right? There's been so much innovation since our careers have began and just in the 5 years alone since after COVID. And, we have a lot of gaps. A lot of people are talking about the gaps in talent. And it's not just our industry. There's generational gaps, there's technical gaps, there's a different way of learning, right? There's new technologies that we have. And so this awareness and communication is going to help us with that interplay of all the systems. But when we really look at the industry, how do you think each person can take some self responsibility in being able to, what I've just come up with in the last few days, is the analogy that's been used many times before, is how can we in this particular industry all be the drop of water in the ocean that turns into the wave?
I think for me personally, I think that it's self reflection.
Mm,
And I think that there's a question that may be very important for each one of us to ask. And that's the question, why is it important for me to be here? And I think if we can really get to the answer to that question and we can share that with each other, I think it sparks a conversation
mm,
that's important to have. So, why is it important for me to be here in this moment at this time? And like, if I think about that personally and why I made the pivot in my career from selling airplanes to doing coaching over the last couple of years, it's really about that question. Why is it important for me
mm,
to be here? Is it important for me to help one more company buy an airplane? Or is it important for me to be in this place to make a difference in aviation? So my son and my daughter, who are also in aviation, have a better workplace or an industry from which they can retire 40 years from now, and that they've been proud in which to have a career. So I think that it's important, to do that self reflection and then to think about what we can add for the greater collective and not just have it be self centered. Because if my answer is to make a lot of money, then that is a completely different answer, which probably would
right,
have kept me in aircraft sales. But why
right.
it's important for me to be here in the role that I'm in right now is because I want to make a change for an industry for a generation or two or three to come to make aviation a better workplace for everyone.
I love that answer so much for so many reasons. And it's important to check in regularly, I think, with that question. I'm doing a coaching program right now, and it's in the with aerospace. It's called Space Kind, and then level one, we did some foundational work. Now we're in level two, and we created the life vision for ourselves. Right? We always talk about company visions, but what about our personal life vision? And as I went through it and then was reviewing it, I thought about the last time I had done the exercise. The last time I had done the exercise might have been a year and a half ago. And there were a lot of very specific outcomes that I wanted because I thought that's what would make me feel successful or happy or doing the thing. And I was very pleased and surprised and like, oh, actually, everything on here is about a way of being now rather than, oh, it needs to look like this.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool thing that I would not have even recognized had I not gone through the exercise again. A lot of these exercises, things we're talking about, are not one and done. Like, cool, I did my self reflection for my life. I can keep going. I'm done. This is something to regularly come back to and reflect on.
Yeah. I wrestled with this a lot 4 or 5 years ago, in thinking about a life plan. And I think as we plan our lives,
Right.
we lack the foresight necessary to know that something major is going to change. That could
Right.
be the birth of a child, it could be a pandemic, it could be a change in a career, it could be a move around the globe like it was for you. Um, we can't really plan because we don't know all of the other factors, but
Right.
we can decide, we can choose who we want to be. So
Yes.
I never encourage people to come up with a life plan, like not even
Right.
a 5-year plan, but
No, I don't do
what,
that.
what's your life vision? Like at the
Yeah.
end of your life, whether that's next week or 60 years from now, what do you want to have been true about your life? And what do you want people saying about you? Like
Yeah.
if they're all sitting around talking about you at your celebration of life or your funeral, whichever they choose to have for you, what do you want them to say was true about you? And those are the elements in my life vision. And it sounds like those are now the elements in your life vision as well. I think it's important to
Yeah.
know who you want to be, who you are, and who you want to be, and make choices along those lines. And that's why
Absolutely.
it's important to ask the question, why is it important for me to be here?
Yes. And if it's not important, give yourself permission to pivot away from that. It may have been important to you before, and that's okay that it's no longer important. It doesn't have to be that forever. Whatever you choose today does not have to be your choice tomorrow if you evolve and your preferences evolve with that. And that includes for the businesses as well, right? What you initially started something for, if that has since changed, you can sell the business, you can transform it, you can go into another industry. And I think that's something that we all need to help each other with in supporting that permission to pivot, to use my own term there.
I love it.
Renee, I always like to ask my guests, who's on your personal board of advisors?
Whew. My personal advice, the number one on my personal board of advisors, because I'm a woman of faith, is Jesus. And then I have a group of female entrepreneurs who are on that board of advisors as well. One is in the real estate business, one is a professional counselor, one's in the medical field, a couple are in aviation. And I just think that it's so important to have people who have similar values, who
Mhm.
hold you accountable and who will challenge you on the days you need to be challenged and lift you up on the days that you need encouragement. But being very purposeful about choosing who you're going to be listening to and who you're allowing to speak into your life is incredibly important.
Absolutely. I think the intentionality there is something that sometimes we forget about or we've adopted through osmosis because of our upbringing or our collective culture as a society or as a, where did you go to school? What company do you work for? All of those things. And really examining those and again, being okay to put them on the shelf if it's no longer serving you. Maybe at some point it did. And so recognizing now, well, what could serve you even better? And allowing yourself to have people in different spaces. I love that you mentioned they're in different fields. It's not just all aviation, right? And this allows you to gain those multiple perspectives you talked about earlier.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so my third question, which is often stumbling block for some people because it's not something we often think about. How do you best represent or serve humanity?
Hmm. I think I touched on this earlier in that I believe that I reveal truth to people.
Mm,
I believe that I see people um, when I look, and frankly, I don't always look, but when I do really look at people and really see people, I find that I can encourage them in a way that helps them to find the clarity that they need to take the next step. I'm often told that that's not coming from me, but lots of people have told me that I do that for them as a coach or as a friend. And so I think that I serve humanity best by speaking truth
mm.
and not blowing sunshine.
I love that. And it's very true because you have helped me with that multiple times, especially that workshop we did at CGI London. And then at leadership, when I got my Sarah space face on, and you were like, Sarah, you have to pursue this. You can't let this one go. Like the way that, you reflected back to me what you saw was what I needed to hear in that moment. And it was, you were like, all this other stuff you've been doing, you got to go this way. And at first, it took me a while to kind of let go of some of those things. And then as soon as I went all in, it was like, whoa, this is great. So this is
Yeah,
probably also
sometimes
why I call myself the relentless truth seeker, and you're the truth revealer. So that's a great combo.
we're a great combo. So everyone needs to come see the Truth Seeker and Revealer show at MBAA when we talk
Yeah.
about at base in Las Vegas when we talk about organizational health. We're going to talk about some truth.
Absolutely. Renee, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful podcast episode. And to finally have you on my show as well, ahead of our big session next month, where we're going to see many of our friends, where I know this is going to really resonate. And again, we'll have that ability to come together and band together as an industry. And I know that's what's really important for both of us because we want to see the longevity of this industry and have that passion and that awe. We're all in aviation for a reason. We all look up to the sky. I know when I'm with my people because when there's any sound, we're like, where'd it come from? We're always looking up and we have that wonder and awe. And so we want to make sure that that continues for generations to come. So thank you for being on that mission with me, next to me, with everybody else. Where can people find out more about the services that you provide just to connect with you? Where is the best place to send people?
Theaviationcollective.com is my website. And that's a great place to see the services that I provide. And also, if you did not catch Sarah's link to the growth capacity indicator, you can find that on my website as well. And then I'm most active professionally on LinkedIn and personally on Instagram. So Renee Bengelsdorf on both.
Beautiful. Now, all of those links are in the details of the show notes. So no matter which platform you're watching this from, you will have those links. If you have any questions for Renee, please comment below. Make sure to tag her or me so that we can get back to you in a timely manner. Renee, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you next month in Las Vegas. And I am looking forward to revealing some truths with you.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we'll give some practical advice too, not
Yeah.
just not
We're
just
not just gonna hit you over the head with some bangers and be like truth bomb, but we're going to also help you be able to make some active change.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. Sarah, thanks so much for having me on today. This was so fun.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll see everyone later. Happy flying.